Next, I have a question from James S. that came in, and this was out of York, PA. He says, my name is James. I live in York, PA. It's considered the south central part of Pennsylvania. I just bought your Cool Season Grass program, and my questions are, now he's got 4 questions, so we're going to go through these because these all kind of relate to what we've been talking about. He says, I'm going with a pre-emergent strategy this year instead of overseeding. So can I still aerate, and is there a time limit on waiting once the pre-emergent is put down? So let me just talk you through this a little bit. One of the strategies that I have proposed this year for some folks is I realize that there's a lot of people out there that you're just not able to, or you're not going to go rent an aerator and a mechanical aerator and aerate your lawn. Some of you just aren't physically able to do it. If you don't have a truck, you don't have a way to get it home, and a lot of other reasons. It's a time factor too. So if you're not going to aerate, then I have an alternative for you. It's called our Aerate program, our liquid aeration. That works great. Dives down, breaks bonds, drives lots, reoxygenates the soil nicely. So that's one option. But that's not what James is asking about here. James is saying, I'm not going to aerate in general, and I'm not going to seed. Probably his lawn is thick enough, which, by the way, if your lawn is already thick, if you already have a healthy lawn, there is no need to add any kind of seed to that. I don't see why you would. If it's already thick, there's just no more room. No more room at the end. Let's not drive any more babies in here. Let's just work with what we got. Let's keep those people healthy and happy. And wow, that analogy kind of went off the rails there for a second, but I think you get what I'm putting down there. So then in that case, what we want to do is we want to put down a pre-emergent herbicide. If we're not seeding, we want to put down a pre-emergent. What a pre-emergent herbicide does is it stops weeds from invading, and we have winter or fall germinating annuals like henbit, hairy bittercress, chickweed, and poa annua, or annual bluegrass is a big one. There's a lot of annual bluegrass throughout Pennsylvania, so you want to stop that because you want to just take care of your good grass that's there and keep the invaders out. So you're going to put down a pre-emergent herbicide. We have one available on the lawncarenut.com. It's a dithiopyr is the active ingredient in there. It's a granular. It goes down at 4 pounds per thousand, gives you 3 to 4 months protection, which one application would be fine in York, Pennsylvania there. You put that down, water it in, you're good. It also includes 20% potash, and at that 4 pounds per thousand, you're going to get a full pound of potassium in the lawn, which is great for helping your lawn recover from summer stress. So it's a product I had developed for a couple different reasons, and it looks like James is going that route. And he says, do I still aerate? So the answer is, James, if your lawn is not compacted, then no, there's no need to aerate it mechanically, period. You can use, again, I mentioned our Aerate product, our liquid aeration product, which will dive down and create a lot of oxygen in the soil. It'll break bonds. It does the same thing without the mechanical disturbance or having to, go out and rent the machine. You could use that, but if you don't need that, then don't use that either. Just let the lawn go. But getting into the gist of this first part of the question that James is asking is, Alan, I'm using the pre-emergent. Can I or should I still aerate? And if so, when? So definitely you do not want to mechanically aerate after you've applied pre-emergent. The way the pre-emergents that we use work is they create a vapor barrier right at the soil line there. And what that vapor does is as these weed seeds that germinate and start to come up, it disrupts their cell division and kills them. That's kind of how it works. And if you've mechanically aerated, punched holes with a machine that comes in, and if you've ever aerated, it's a rather violent process, that will break up that vapor barrier. It will cause it to dissipate in a lot of areas and can allow the weed seeds to break through. The other thing that a mechanical aeration can do is stir up some weed seeds that you don't want being stirred up, especially if they were just dropped, say, by some poa annua just a couple months earlier. You don't want to stir those up with a mechanical aeration. You want to leave those dogs to lie, let them germinate inside of that nice vapor barrier and die all on their own, a slow, quiet death where you never have to see them. Now, the other side of that could be, well, I'll aerate now and then I'll throw my pre-emergent down after. And I would say you could do that, but still think about a vapor barrier. It wants to reside right at the soil line. If you have all of these cores laying everywhere, it kind of can make your lawn, just picture it. There's cores laying up everywhere. How's the vapor barrier supposed to work in and around those? And again, what weed seeds might be inside those cores that'll get sifted out. I just don't recommend any type of mechanical disturbance to the lawn, either right before and definitely not right after you put down a pre-emergent. If you're going with a pre-emergent plan, go with the pre-emergent plan and stick that out. Again, you can use the liquid aeration, though. It will go through the barrier just like water or any other liquid, get into the soil and do the same thing for you, and you're all good. Now, the second part of his question is, since I'm using the pre-emergent, I know I'm not supposed to overseed, but can I in the spring? This is an excellent part of your question here, James. And yes, you can overseed in the spring. Now, we're going to talk about maybe why I wouldn't recommend that you do that, but for sure, this product only has a 3 to 4 month residual. If you stick with the 4 pounds per 1,000 square foot rate that I recommend, you're going to get 3 to 4 months of protection out of that. So here we are in September, York, Pennsylvania. Perfect time. As soon as your soil temperatures start to fall to 70, which I believe for you is going to be sometime here real soon, that's when you want to get the pre-emergent down. So if you get 3 to 4 months out, September to October, November, December, I'm pretty sure that by the time you get to December, your ground is going to be frozen and there's no more threat of these weeds germinating and you're going to be fine. Then you can just resume in the spring. Now he continues on with the third part of his question. If I overseed in the spring, is it still a no-no to use pre-emergent? Yes, that is correct. Any pre-emergent we use, dithiopyr is what I'm talking about here, but we also have prodiamine available usually in the spring. We'll probably have both this year because they work interchangeably, is if you use prodiamine or dithiopyr or any other pre-emergent, you cannot overseed. The only product that you can overseed with in limited cases is called Tenacity. That's a brand name, but the actual active ingredient is called mesotrione, and you'll get about 30 days of pre-emergence control out of that. I'm not going to get down that road right now. There are a lot of passionate believers in that one, and I am not against it. It's just not one of those things that I necessarily talk so much about in the fall, but that is the only one that you can use. That is the only one that you can use at the time of overseeding if you follow the instructions. But for the most part, the pre-emergents that we use, which give us long-term control of crabgrass, or in this case, poa annua, or some of the other, fall germinating annuals I've talked about, you cannot seed. So in the spring, if you're going to seed, then you can't use pre-emergent, and the risk that you run into is you can have any seed that grows in the spring get overwhelmed and destroyed with crabgrass come the summer. And that's why I don't recommend spring seeding. I have seen too many times where you'll put in your seed in the spring, it'll start to grow, but crabgrass being an annual, it lives fast and it dies hard. So it will outgrow, it will outpace whatever Kentucky bluegrass or tall fescue or whatever you put in there. It will outgrow it, outpace it, outcompete it, and a lot of the seeding that you did in the spring will be for naught. So that's why I recommend going with this pre-emergent strategy here in the fall that you have here, James, that you also couple that right up with a lot of heavy fertilization. Cool season lawns can take heavy nitrogen fertilizer in the fall. Carbon X would be excellent. 818X Green would also be excellent. Put that in there, hammer those in there, thicken that lawn up in the fall since you're keeping out the weeds, you're not seeding, you're not aerating, still push the existing lawn that you have, and then the next spring, just pick right up with that same strategy. As soon as soil temperatures start to get over 55 in the spring, start pushing again with heavy fertilize every 4 weeks, hit it hard, 3/4 pound, maybe you go a pound, keep the pre-emergence in to keep the crabgrass out, and just keep ramping that lawn up. Then when you get through summer, and again, sometimes summer causes damage from disease, insects, whatever, but then when you get to the next fall, you'll make the decision again. Am I going to go with pre-emergent strategy, or do I need to seed now to thicken things back up? That's kind of how the cycle works. The idea being that after a while, after a couple years, you shouldn't have to really overseed anymore because your lawn should be sufficiently thick. And then his fourth question is, if I do overseed, what ground temp should I be looking for? So I kind of just covered a little bit about that. Now, James isn't seeding in the fall time, but I'll go over the seed windows anyway. If you're seeding in the fall time, you want to get your grass seed down as soil temperatures are falling to 70 degrees out of summer, and you want to make sure that you've got a 45-day window there before you get any kind of a frost or freeze in the outside air temperature. So as soil temperatures fall to 70, seed goes down, you need a 45-day window, which is 2 mowings as well. And I say 2 mowings as the grass has become mature. That will then ensure that your grass can make it through winter. If you're going to seed in the spring, and listen, I recommend against seeding in the spring, but as I mentioned in the very beginning of the podcast, everybody can do their own thing. You got tons of different strategies that you can go after. Just because I give you some certain advice, it doesn't mean you have to follow it. You can always go against the rules and still have great success and learn along the way. If you're going to seed in the spring, then you want to seed as soil temperatures are approaching, probably 55 or 60 in the spring, but you don't want there to be a chance for a freeze to come. And that's one of those things in York, Pennsylvania. Sometimes you guys can get a freeze as late as April. So you kind of have to deal with that. But definitely as soil temperatures are rising out of winter up to 55, 60, that's when you would seed, and then you're off to the races from there.